Hello, welcome back to War Mysteries. I'm joined again with another special guest. This is Ed coming back to us.
Hello.
And of course, Matt. I'm Jay. This week we're looking at something pretty spectacular. A very famous UFO sighting.
Pretty mysterious.
On a cold night in December of 1980, a strange series of events is reported to have taken place in the heavily forested area near two military air bases in Kent, here in the UK. Unusual lights, strange aerial phenomena, and even, allegedly, one serviceman coming into physical contact with an object of unknown origin. The incident was witnessed by a number of different people, not just military personnel, local farmers, civilians, and even a couple of policemen.
And some cows.
Perhaps most startling of all is that the object left traces of evidence in the forest. This is the case of the Rendlesham UFO.
Boom.
So, Rendlesham UFO, what do you guys know about it?
I did a bit of research.
Fair enough, cool.
A small bit of research. UK's most well-known UFO encounter.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very popular at the time.
I also did some research.
That's it. Did some research.
Yeah, I did some research. I did find out that there was American military were involved.
Yep, they had command of both air bases near the edge of Rendlesham Forest. One's called RAF Bentwaters, the other one is RAF Woodbridge. So let's get into the timeline.
Let's go.
I'll spin you a yarn. At around 3 AM on December 26, 1980, strange reports filtered up the chain of command at RAF Woodbridge, a military airbase in Kent, UK. Together with nearby RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge was an airbase at the time under the command of the United States Air Force, housing fighter, close air support, and interceptor squadrons. So A-10 Thunderbolts and interceptors, which I think at the time would probably have been F-16s or maybe F-15s at the time.
One of these?
No, that doesn't come into the story till a bit later.
Have a little show.
Yeah,
show them. One of these.
This is a Lockheed A-12, but the drone in particular on top there, which is a D-21. It comes into the story a bit later on.
It better. And when did it become an airbase in the United Kingdom?
Woodbridge was established during the Second World War, along with Bentwaters, towards the end of the war, and they were used exclusively for heavily battle-damaged planes to land before they could get back to their own air bases. So if they were stragglers...
What if they couldn't get there?
Well, they're going to land in the sea, aren't they? So they were established to be kind of rescue bases, because they're quite close to the coast. Maybe that pigeon.
Yeah.
That's going to piss us off, isn't it? Just leave him there, it's fine, he won't pick it up. He probably will pick it up. Personnel guarding the east gate had seen lights descending into the trees of nearby Rendlesham Forest, and were concerned that the lights may have in fact been an aircraft in distress. A small group of men were dispatched into the forest to investigate. According to some accounts, unknown aircraft were intermittently detected on radar around this time. Approximately 1 mile from the gate, the servicemen noticed incoming radio transmissions from the airbase were breaking up, becoming disjointed and patchy. This was rather unusual, as the radio units were frequently used over much longer distances in the area. Regardless, one man was left at the edge of the forest to maintain radio contact between the search team and Woodbridge Air Base.
Were they thinking at that time plane crash?
It was quiet, they didn't hear any sound, so they thought perhaps it was a plane under no power, just coming down into the woods.
Yeah.
But they obviously, that's all they had, just a light going down into the woods, quite bright. So they obviously thought a plane was coming down, or there'd been some sort of mishap, or maybe it was a light aircraft, like a civilian thing.
No explosion.
No explosion, they didn't hear a crash, just literally saw a light descending. An object was spotted moving through the trees near the edge of the forest, emitting a bright white light and heading deeper into the foliage. It was described by one serviceman as triangular in shape, black, and approximately the size of a car. It settled in a small clearing deep in the forest. The men moved towards the object. It reportedly emitted a bright red light from its peak.
Bright lights.
It could have been brake lights, I suppose, but at the peak of it, and blue lights from around the base.
Police car.
Got all the answers today.
So at this point, 2 of them have gone into the forest, and one of those 2 guys has seen this triangular black shape.
Yeah, it's about the size of a car. They said, and yeah, it was literally emitting a white light. It doesn't say from where. I'm guessing from underneath, perhaps. And it literally just floated into the forest from the edge of the forest, but moved through the trees deeper, and they followed it in. Technical Sergeant Penniston approached and examined the aircraft. He noted unusual pictorial glyphs on the object, stating that he had in fact expected to see USAF or something like that. He said the object was warm, gave off a feeling of electricity bouncing around much stronger, and also that he felt drawn, pulled towards it. The craft hovered or stood on legs and made no sound. Upon physically touching the object, Penniston claims he had visions of digits. He would later reproduce these numbers, writing 16 separate pages of binary code, apparently entirely from memory. Animals on a nearby farm went into a frenzy. The craft then shot into the sky.
So he found an object.
They saw it
could
fly
just
in.
feel the warmth.
They went up to it. It landed in the forest. This guy thought he was seeing an aircraft of some kind, some aerial vehicle, maybe a drone, perhaps. Not the kind of drone we would think of today. Of course, it'd be more like a larger, more cumbersome sort of thing from the 80s. They said it was either on legs or it was hovering. They couldn't see because it was quite dark.
And how much did you say they'd all had to drink before they went out and sort of come back to this? Was it?
It didn't say. They hadn't been drinking.
Okay.
They're on duty. It's 3 a.m.
Fair play.
It's Boxing Day. 3 a.m.
Boxing Day.
Boxing Day.
December 26th, yeah.
New fact.
No, it was... I did say earlier.
Did you? Oh.
Penniston claims he had visions of digits. They would later reproduce these numbers, writing 16 separate pages of binary code, apparently entirely from memory.
Accurate binary code?
Yeah, actually. We look into those a bit later on, when we get into the theories. I managed to find them online. There's 16 separate notebook-sized pages of ones and zeros. They've been translated as well.
And they picked that up from the ship. Sorry,
This guy touched the surface of this object and had a vision of binary numbers.
Good. So as further we go through the story, then the more it's becoming possibly that it's grounded in reality. I like that.
So that was the first night. That was the first experience, encounter. 3 guys, of course. One of them stayed at the edge of the wood. The other 2 went and saw
Did
this.
it shoot off vertically? Did it go?
It depends on the story you read. I used mainly these 2 textbooks and a few articles I found online from slightly more reputable web sources. Over the following days, more radar signatures and strange lights were detected, and so Colonel Charles Halt led his own search team to personally determine the cause.
Sounds very strict.
Charles Halt? What are you found here, boys? Goddamn UFO?
Can we get a photo of him up?
Yeah, we can do.
I bet he's got a moustache.
He hasn't.
Well, then I lose that bet.
Once the team had reached the alleged site of the encounter in the forest, 3 indentations were found in a triangular formation on the ground. Additionally, branches were broken from nearby trees, and there was evidence of bowl scorching and light incendiary damage to the bark of a number of them. Using a Geiger counter, radiation readings were collected from the area. Background readings were normal, however, when the burned trees and the indentations were measured, readings were significantly higher. Halt carried with him a small microcassette recorder and maintained an audio log in real time as they investigated. Bowl scorching is not actually burning as such. It's not like cooked bark. It's heat damage.
Looks like somebody's had a barbecue in front of it.
No. Well, kind of. It's like intense heat damage.
It's blackened.
It is slightly blackened. It's a bit carbonised, but it's more like resin was seeping out of the tree because it had liquefied.
Okay.
So it was damaged to the tree. You see it a lot in forest fires where the trees haven't actually burned, but they've been heat damaged.
Okay.
That was present on trees all around this site.
In a ring.
Yeah.
Charles Halt was not happy.
No, the National Trust. It's trees, isn't it?
Radiation readings were collected.
What did they do that for?
The standard procedure it's like when you draw a line of chalk around a body in the past. It's just standard procedure.
What? And was the kit they used
Geiger counters.
good for their job?
Well, they're military, so you'd hope so.
Well, what I read was that the Geiger counters they used were designed for use indoors in smaller areas.
To be fair, they were used to examine objects at close range, so maybe that's what they meant. These were,
maybe
you can get ones that measure background radiation. They're Roentgen meters. And then you've got Geiger counters. Some guy called Kurt, I think it's Kurt Geiger his name was, came up with, or developed. Another German.
Do we have an actual reading, like a number?
Well, background readings were 1 on this reading. The trees read 4. These indentations read 5 to 8. That's quite a jump. You'd expect background radiation, like solar radiation, UVA, UVB, to be between 1 and 2 on this counter, apparently. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what equipment they used.
The man was obsessed.
But not obsessed with taking photos of these.
Well, this is what I thought. I wondered, and again that comes into one of the theories later. There was camera equipment would be readily available, and especially considering that one of the squadrons that was based at Woodbridge was an aircraft recovery squadron. They cover large swaths of area, and the only way they're going to be finding anybody is with optics or cameras of some kind. So you would think that there would be an abundance of camera equipment around, and why they didn't use one.
So hang on a minute, no one took a camera?
No photos.
Pictures?
No photos.
He took a dictaphone, making notes, but no.
And
camera.
nobody had the phone on them? 80s.
There we go.
80s.
See that light bulb above his head just go off.
That'd be going on, wouldn't it? Not off.
Same.
Let the record state, my brother just claimed that on and off are the same.
Just fine, I'll just edit it so he looks like the idiot.
Shortly after beginning their examination of the site, a light appeared in a nearby field to the north, which moved through the trees at high speed. It emitted a bright laser-like white beam on the ground, a few metres from the men, which they took to be a warning. It seemed to focus on the site of the original encounter. 5 objects were then spotted in the sky, flying at impossible speed erratically, as though scanning the area. Similar bright beams were spotted emanating from them. One of the objects shone a beam directly into the nearby airbase, focusing on the weapons storage bunkers. Halt thought the lights in the sky could have been conducting a grid-like search of the area, perhaps to locate the object originally seen on the night of the 26th. Early in the morning of the 30th of December, a red sun-like object was briefly spotted pulsing and moving through the forest, and at around 2 AM, RAF Watton reported an uncorrelated target disappearing from radar over Rendlesham Forest. This was the last confirmed sighting in the area.
You'd crap yourself, wouldn't you?
I would. I'd have been out of there.
Captain Holt wouldn't have.
Nah, he was...
He would have been, with a name like that, he would have been ready for anything.
For someone that's... I mean, he was a lieutenant colonel, which is quite high rank.
So not captain.
Not captain.
Right.
He's quite forthcoming with information. I mean, he's never gone after the record and said, actually, no, it was a hoax. You know, we were faking it. He's maintained his entire life. He's still alive today. He's maintained his entire life that this happened. He's never wavered from his story. One other thing I forgot to mention, which we all hear on the tape, when they went into the woods to do the radiation testing and they found the burn marks on the trees, they used units called light oil. They're basically a big lamp, kind of like these really, just a big lamp. They make that big boom sound when you turn them on, you know, you see them in films. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't work. He describes it on the tape as a mechanical problem.
Yeah.
But they have to go back to the base to get another one.
Check the bulbs.
They did. Check the bulbs were okay, filaments were fine apparently. But they wouldn't work for some reason, which is similar to the radios not working.
Can only be aliens then.
Aliens.
That's the only obvious...
Mystery solved,
yep.
Lads.
Done. End of episode, thanks for watching.
See you next week. Probably not. It's gonna be longer than that. Unusual. What's Matt's drawing, Smith?
I was praying it was going to be relevant to what we were talking about. It just isn't. You're not missing anything on that bit of paper over there, so don't worry about it. Might show it at the end.
Crack on!
Was there not more staff in the bunker?
There were plenty of people on the base. Yeah, it's an active military base.
And they all have.
There aren't as many accounts of intermittent viewing or sightings, but the majority of the people that were in the base would have seen what was going on. They may have chosen not to speak out about it, perhaps. Yeah. That comes into play a bit later as well.
You'd think after 4 days of weird happenings, they'd get everybody.
You think, yeah. You would think that there would be... I mean, it's near 2 air bases, and you know what the US Air Force are like. They're all over it, you know. They're the first ones to step into the fray. So you would think, yeah, that they would do something about it. But apparently nothing was really done. The report, Colonel Halt's report, wasn't released until, I think, the 31st of January, so about a month later. So either it wasn't seen as a priority or they didn't believe him. So that's what happened. Bit odd.
Yeah, a bit odd.
Lights flying around.
Lights.
Animals going crazy.
Radiation.
Yeah, radiation. That's what makes this a bit more tangible than most of the sort of, you know, the average UFO sightings that you get. Because there is physically something there that was measurable. A measurable force that was acting on the environment. Whereas normally it's just, it landed there. Saw a light in a field, or the car shut off.
And it's a lieutenant saying that he saw it, which is also...
Which, yeah, I think lends a little bit of weight to it. So, our first theory then, and there are only 2 theories. The first theory is that it was just misconception. The most popular opinion surrounding the events of late December 1980 is that a collection of misunderstandings and overreactions merged to form a story that was ripe with inaccuracies. The lights descending over the forest on the night of the 26th have a few possible explanations. Crashing aircraft that was simply not located. Rendlesham Forest is quite big.
That's not likely though, is it?
Unlikely because they didn't hear anything.
And isn't there a squadron specifically designed to find crashed stuff?
Yep, an exceptionally bright meteor, which was actually seen that night on the 26th of December at about 3 a.m. A very, very bright meteor that came into the atmosphere. And obviously from the ground it would look like it was going down.
And then there was a meteorite.
There really was, yeah. There actually was a very, very bright meteor breaking it. Probably similar to that one that you saw in Russia on the internet a few years ago.
Yes. Something
like that. Or the Orford Ness Lighthouse, which is almost line of sight east from the base. There is actually a white shield, if you like, that prevents the light beam from shining inland. And it would have blocked the light from the base, but it wouldn't have blocked the light if you were stood in the woods. So you would see this beam through the trees as it spun.
But it would have... You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the weather conditions at the time. I couldn't find much information on that. It was just a dark, cold...
It wouldn't be a beam, though. It would be a...
It'd be a flash.
Yeah.
You'd see the distance, yeah. So, yeah, I know what you mean. Generally, when you think of light in the woods, it's kind of like it's like an impression, isn't it? Like you see beams of light coming through. And to be fair, that's generally what they describe. So I didn't think the lighthouse was particularly strong candidate, but it's mentioned. There was concern at the time that the objects may have been a downed Soviet spy plane, or even a satellite. However, nothing was ever recovered to support this hypothesis. It was known that a Lockheed D-21 drone had crashed somewhere in Siberia following a trial flight, and it was later discovered that an attempt to reverse engineer this aircraft, codenamed Raven, was made in Russia. But the project was abandoned in favour of satellite technology.
Back in the 1980, was there Soviet spy planes going over the UK?
Not really, no. They did then very much what they're actually doing now in 2019. You hear on the news all the time about how RAF fighters are having to intercept Russian planes over international airspace. I read it all the time in the news.
They're forever testing other people's defences, I guess. It's
Political.
Nothing was ever found in the forest to support this hypothesis, but it was known at the time that one of these, which is a Lockheed D-21 drone, one actually crashed in Siberia, which is perhaps where this theory comes from.
Okay.
Because the Soviets, they were known later to have found it and tried to reverse engineer it. It was going to be codenamed Raven. These were used for Mach 3 plus reconnaissance. They were unmanned. They were fitted with cameras, usually obliquely underneath. They would be launched from what is called an M21, the mother and daughter, MD.
Mm-hmm. Clever.
It was designed to fly over enemy territory, photograph a certain area, return to where it began, jettison the camera, which would parachute safely to Earth. That would explode.
Okay, so that's quite a high possibility, but people know that it happened.
Yes, 3 times or possibly even 4 times, I believe. It was designed to be a single-use vehicle. Only one flight was successful. So you can find it online. There's quite a lot of information about it. It's very, very interesting. You can even see the crash wreckage in a Russian museum somewhere.
Okay.
So they thought perhaps that was what had happened. They'd reverse engineered and prepared one of these.
But they couldn't find any evidence.
They found nothing in the forest. No. So it kind of puts paid to that theory, really, in my eyes. But it's a possibility, I guess.
The object that was actually seen in the trees, however, is harder to identify. Some have suggested that the physical description given of the object, as viewed from a distance, most closely matches that of a tractor. But no explanation is given as to how this was apparently able to move at such high speed, nor can it account for hovering or the burn marks found at the site. As for the testimony from Penniston that he came into physical contact with the object, many suggest this is simply an elaborate hoax. The indentations in the ground are explained away as old rabbit holes, and the burn markings somehow inflicted by the men to lend credence to their story. Colonel Halt's story is harder to debunk, but the confusion regarding the dates in his report is cited as evidence against his credibility. As for the high radiation readings, these were dismissed by scientific analysts as negligible.
Some have suggested that the physical description of the object, as viewed from a distance, most closely matches that of a tractor. To be fair, you did say earlier, Matt, red light at the top.
Brake light.
Brake light. And that is where they are on a tractor.
John Deere.
And there were farms nearby. So,
But a big loud tractor.
big loud tractor floating through the woods. No blue lights on them as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
It's a bit odd.
And a tractor wouldn't be in the woods.
Exactly. And it depends really again on how much you trust the testimony of the guys that found it originally. Perhaps they did see something with a red light on it not moving and they thought, oh, if we tell them it had blue lights and it was flying around.
Yeah, also true.
You have to kind of take it as you get it really, I suppose.
There's no picture evidence of any of this. We're just basically believing what everybody said happened.
Until you get to the point where they discover radiation, burn marks, branch damage, and obviously the stuff that you hear them talking about on the recording. There is more than one person on this audio recording.
But even the radiation, they could have just said it's more, right?
Yeah, true. Police who visited the scene later found no evidence of UFO activity.
Why are police getting involved?
I'm not entirely sure. That didn't really get explained either in what I read in these books or what was online, to be fair. Just, I guess, at some point, perhaps members of the public perhaps phoned them up.
Well, it wasn't within the military base that it happened, was it? It would have been on not common ground, but on presumably business land they were using to
farms.
Grow. You know,
farms were nearby. There were civilians living in little villages nearby and things like that. But you know, it could have been some bloke running around the field with an axe or something, couldn't it? So there are a fair few to be fair, people out there that don't think this actually happened. I think maybe it's just a hoax. The fact that the British government was completely silent about it for years, you can take that either way really. Maybe they thought there was no reason to alarm people, maybe they thought it was just nonsense that wasn't worth their time.
They would be silent if it was something...
Yeah, true. If there were something that happened, then you would think that they would cover it up. That seems to be the MO really of the government, doesn't it, when it comes to stuff like this?
fair enough.
So the second theory then is that there was a genuine encounter with a UFO in the woods.
second theory, though more unpopular, holds that the objects encountered in the forest were in fact of unknown origin. To have given such a detailed description of the craft, Penniston must have seen something. The glyphs he described can be seen on a statue of the object that has been placed in the forest, roughly on the site of the encounter. Penniston also mentioned a vision of numbers during his experience of touching the object. As previously mentioned, he later wrote these down from memory. There were 16 notebook pages in total.
That's a bit weird. He touched it and now he can remember a series of hundreds of numbers.
16 pages. I mean, every ASCII character is made of 8 digits, zeros and ones. 16 pages of that is a lot of information.
I'm thinking first presentation psychosis.
What does that mean?
He's wacky.
Potentially.
He'd have to have a photographic memory though, surely, to remember all of these numbers.
Could just made it all up. Or did he remember it and then keep remembering it after? Or did he say one time, this is it?
These numbers didn't come out until 2010. So...
Come out to the public until 2010?
Yeah. He didn't release them to the public until then, because he thought there was no significance in them. So it kind of goes against it a little bit.
Yeah.
So that is kind of... You can see there a little bit.
And we can put this on the...
Yeah, we'll show it there. So that's one page of 16 of what he wrote. Literally, zeros and ones. The red markers on that picture there show where each character ends and each next one begins. Literally 16 pages of that.
Looks like the stuff we used to get kids to do in detention when I worked in schools.
That's a harsh detention.
Yeah.
That's awful.
All the different colours. That's the hard bit. Lids on and off.
But if this didn't come out until
2010.
2010, 30 years after the incident, that...
Is it? Yeah. Is there any credence to it? So it goes both ways. As soon as he finished writing them, this image disappeared from his mind. Apparently, he couldn't remember them anymore, and he was left with 16 pages of a notebook with numbers in that he didn't realise what they were.
Okay. They have been translated though.
They have, and translated. The binary numbers appear to spell out the following message. There are some continuity errors because of how it was written so quickly. They can't figure out if it's a 0 or a 1. I guess. It reads Exploration of Humanity 666 8100. Then there are coordinates, a list of coordinates. I'll go through those in a moment. Then it says continuous for planetary, and then it says advan. They guess it must mean advance. Fourth coordinate, and then it breaks up a bit. It says continue, perhaps continuous. A few letters that don't make any sense in order. And then the word before. Then we'll go through those coordinates again in a minute. Then it says eyes of your eyes, origin, the first set of coordinates, and then origin year 8100. Quite odd.
The true meaning of the message is not known. However, coordinates for several sites appear in the code. The significance of these places seems obvious.
So the first one that's mentioned, there are coordinates for a place called Hy Brasil, which is a phantom island that's said to lie west of Ireland in the Atlantic Ocean. Irish myths describe it as clouded in mist, except for one day every 7 years, when it becomes visible but still cannot be reached.
A real island?
Can't find it on maps. Put the coordinates into Google. But there's just empty ocean there.
Has anybody had a look for it?
Apparently so. People have gone out trying to find this place, but again, it's part of an Irish myth. Involves all kinds of sea pirates, murderers.
That's that cleared up then.
The next location is Caracol in Belize, which is an ancient Mayan city, originally thought to be a tertiary centre, which is basically an outlying district of the Mayan Empire, but now known to be one of the most important political centres in the Mayan lowlands at the time. It was abandoned in AD 1050, nearly 1,000 years ago. Then there is Sedona in Arizona. It's now a modern city in the desert, but it was once home to archaic humans, some of the very first upright walking humans.
In Arizona?
Apparently so. Around 9000 BCE.
Might have been on holiday.
Also said to be home to powerful spiritual vortices or vortexes, which are apparently quite healing.
So far, we've got an Irish island
Yeah.
that apparently appears every 7 years.
Yep.
Out of the mist.
A powerful vortex.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and an ancient Mayan city.
I mean, that's the only real.
That's pretty on the nose, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these are the coordinates. Yeah, how many more are there?
4. There's also the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Was that on there? Was it?
Obviously, they've been associated with astronomy for forever, really.
And there's mystery surrounding them involving aliens.
And their alignment with Orion. Obviously,
Yeah.
they were built for a specific purpose.
They could be a whole other episode.
They could be indeed. The Nazca Lines, you ever heard of those? They're in Peru.
I have, yes.
Basically,
Perfectly straight, aren't they? Or
They're huge.
geometrically perfect.
Almost. They're huge land sculptures. Far too big, really, to have been designed and the people to have known what they were making, I guess. Unless they'd some kind of system of seeing from above. Huge animal shapes, glyphs, symbols. They're basically a shallow incision in the soil of the desert. They were created between 500 BC and AD 500, in that sort of 1,000-year period. The next one is Taishan Ku in China, which is the last gate before heaven. It's found atop Mount Tai.
I think there's a restaurant in town called that as well.
One of the 5 sacred mountains of China, and is key in Chinese religion. It's a place visited by emperors to offer sacrifices and to meditate during the Zhao dynasty, which was before AD 1000. So about 1,000 years ago. Not ancient China, but
Old.
China.
Yeah.
The last location is the Temple of Apollo on the island of Naxos, which is in Greece, of course. It's a door-like remnant of the temple. The Portara, Great Door, is all that remains of this temple. It's a 40-ton marble doorway. Huge. It's the only part of the temple besides the plinth that it's sat on that remains.
Is there any mystery surrounding this doorway, this temple?
Not particularly. I mean, it's got some significance to Greek history and Greek mythology, more importantly. Apparently it's the place, I think it's Ariadne's cradle.
So key spots then, key like anthropologically quite important,
Well,
astrologically quite important
yeah,
places in
all
the
of
world.
the sites, they've either got mythic, religious or historic importance to humanity.
So we couldn't have made it up then.
Of course you could have made it up.
Yeah.
I'd say if you were going to make it up, you're going to come out with the...
Oh yeah,
Those
he
kind of
would have made it up,
places,
wouldn't
you
he? Because the
would've-
door was shut and everything. I'm thinking he came out with it and didn't it? It went, oh yeah, like this happened. No one was there.
If you're going to come out with coordinates that are linked to aliens, you want to say, oh, well, you know, the pyramids, the lines, this island.
For a second, I thought it was like an exorcisty thing, and he was there doing it, and then he came out.
That's what he said he was doing, but then we haven't seen these coordinates till 30 years after the event.
So it does kind of pull the wind out of the sails a bit, doesn't it?
Like sinks the ship.
The recording made by Colonel Halt describes the encounter in the forest during the investigation. Key moments, including detection of impact-related radiation, tree scorching, the apparent indentations in the ground, and amazingly, visual acquisition of the lights can be heard on the tape.
150 feet or more from the initial, I should say, suspected impact point. Having a lift going, we can't get the light all to work. Seems to be some kind of mechanical problem. Yeah, the meter's definitely giving the flash. Yeah, so I was going to say, let's go to the center of the area next and see what kind of reading we get out there. You're reading the clicks, I can't hear the clicks. Yes, sure. Got about the center, Bruce? Okay, it's good. Center. Yes, that's the best deflection of the needle I've seen yet. Okay, can you give me an estimation? We're on the 0.5 scale. We're getting... At approximately 01:25 hours. We're getting right at a half of a millimeter. Up to what, 7? What? Just jumped up to what? 7/10, yeah. 7/10 right here in the center? Uh-huh. Look, 3 trees in the area, immediately adjacent to the site, within 10 feet of the suspected landing site. We're picking up heat reflection off the trees. Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees, plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like some of one came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter. On 148, we're getting very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. Strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. Yellow. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left. Yeah, definitely moving to the left. Two lights. One light to the front, one light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Crossing the next field now, we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. Now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. Moving out fast. Yeah, they're both heading north. Here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. We're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. We're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground.
So anyway, yeah, that's the Halt tape. The surrounding terrain was well known to them, so they would be familiar with what burn marks on trees are, what the condition of the trees would be, because they spoke about branches that were quite high up that were broke, and there was a circular indentation, which presumably is where the craft shot up. Broken pine branches.
But there's no photos.
No photos, no. But most of these investigations took place at night. So yeah, sinks the ship a bit when there's no photographic evidence. For Roswell, obviously they had photos of the weather balloon parts, if that's what they were. They had photos of the personnel involved, they had photos of the crash site. Photographic evidence is paramount because it allows analysis after the fact. Because obviously now the trees have grown, things like that.
Yep.
It is worth noting that the personnel present were trained military servicemen, and the bases in which they were assigned had been active for many years, meaning the surrounding terrain was well known to them. Additionally, RAF Woodbridge was home to the Aeroplane Recovery and Rescue Squadron, a group whose specialism was to locate and recover returning satellites and spacecraft, such as manned capsules, a technologically advanced team that answered directly to the Pentagon. It's likely that they would be able to determine the difference between an aerial vehicle of any kind and a tractor. Finally, Halt tape was allegedly collected, with other reports, evidence and samples, by Lieutenant General Charles A. Gabriel, the General of the US Air Force in Europe, in person, shortly after the event.
There was no physical evidence.
Nothing.
That he...
No kind of no metal, nothing like that. No, it was literally trace evidence. So heat damage to trees. You heard on the tape there about there being radiation.
But this guy, he touched a piece, and then it's gone, right? He touched it to get the codes.
He touched whatever it was, object. He said it was warm to the touch. He felt drawn to it. Saw these glyphs on it. It didn't disappear. It did. It shot up.
We should go see it.
We could go see it.
War Mysteries Live.
War Mysteries Live.
I bet it gets packed.
The thing is, they've ruined it a bit. They've made it a family thing. It's kind of like there's a UFO trail with
Get the kids out of there.
with rubbishy
That's
aliens.
a crash site.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's a historic site. It's, like you say, it's a crash site, potentially of a UFO, perhaps one of the most important places on Earth.
As with any investigation that has been conducted regarding a potential object of unknown origin, the authenticity of the Rendlesham affair is debated. On the one hand, much weight is lent to the account by the presence of figures of authority, the tangible evidence apparently left behind by the craft, and the real-time audio account of the discoveries made by the servicemen at the site. On the other, no photographic evidence of the object exists, despite the availability of camera equipment. The trace evidence that is presented is not irrefutable, and much of the sightings that were experienced by larger groups can be attributed to a variety of alternative
and therefore terrestrial phenomena, such as meteors, lighthouse beacons, vehicle headlights, and astronomical events. In the end, the truth of the matter is generally evasive. One believes, or one does not. Either the object observed in the forest is the product of an elaborate and long-lasting hoax, perpetrated by a determined and well-organised group of people, and collectively reinforced over a number of decades, or, on a cold and otherwise quiet night in December of 1980, observed by a sizable number of military personnel, an object of unknown origin and purpose descended into the trees of Rendlesham Forest. Whether the Rendlesham Forest object was simply the next in a long line of hoaxes and frauds, or in fact a genuine UFO encounter, may never be known.
That's pretty much the weight of it, to be honest. It's quite a short event. Just bang and it was gone, really.
Matt, what is your insight? Are you ready for this?
Big. I don't know. I really don't know.
Do you think it was a tractor?
I think that the Americans might have been testing some sort of new technology. Something along those lines was seen. American station there weren't necessarily in the know.
Could be a need to know thing, and that would explain why someone so high up as the General of the Air Force would turn up to collect evidence for it. So yeah, just support that, is certain.
That's what I would. That's where I'd put my money.
It is weird that there was a meteor at the time.
Yeah,
That's strange.
again, the timing of that was too convenient, I think.
I think it was a goddamn UFO. I think that they saw something that they didn't understand and have embellished the story to make it more interesting. But then this guy did turn up and collect tapes, which kind of gives the story more credence.
Yeah, that's why I sort of left it towards the end, because it's a bit of a twist in the tail right at the very end of it then, isn't it?
I don't think it was a tractor. I don't think it was any...
Miraculous floating tractor.
I don't think it was military equipment. I think if it was military equipment, it would have been more... There would be more people involved, and this guy Halt would have known. Oh, this is what it definitely is. This is what we're flying. We're flying a drone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's what it's going to be. I also don't think that it was a UFO.
No.
Probably not.
Probably not. Like you say, they saw something, they didn't know what it was. Over time, the story kind of compounded, changed. The fact that those codes came out in 2010 and not 1980 immediately is quite suspicious to me.
That's quite suspicious.
It kind of throws a spanner into the entire thing, really, for me. Until I read that, I was thinking, oh, wow, look at this. Look at what he's got. And then it said, oh, by the way, he released it 30 years after it happened.
But if it was a crashed drone, it then disappeared the next day, someone else must have got involved.
One of the biggest problems for me with the UFO as opposed to other earthly technology then is that obviously the amount of time that elapsed between these guys first found it and they went into the woods themselves in force to find whatever it was far too great for there to have been no tampering involved, potentially by another interested party, perhaps even RAF Bentwaters. It's a mystery for a reason. So that's essentially it. There's a couple of days of some really wacky, strange things happening. Whichever way you look at it, something happened.
Something strange definitely happened. Something unexplained definitely happened. And it was a mystery.
It was a mystery. And it will remain, unfortunately. One day we'll crack one.
Let us know your views in the comments below.
Yeah. Tell us what you think. So, that's it for this week. Thanks again to Ed for joining us all the way from Hong Kong.
Thank you.
It's good to have our correspondent from the Far East with us again. Obviously Matthew has enjoyed himself and written us a nice little note. Come back again for another episode where we'll still be ploughing our way through the Cold War. Who knows what we'll come up with next. So thanks for watching. Like, follow, subscribe if you want to see some more. And as always, follow us on Instagram because it does help us grow.
Down there.
That's the one. So yeah, UFOs, lads. Everyone loves a UFO.
Everyone loves a UFO.
You love a good UFO, don't you?
I love a good UFO.
Don't think it was a tractor though.